At the very beginning of this year, on January 1st, 2025, the Palisades of California caught a blaze. Over $150 billion in damage, and 12 people died. Initially, reports said that this was caused by climate change. And as it just so often tends to be the case, it turns out climate change actually has a face. Before I dive in, please, if you enjoy what you hear in this video, then like and subscribe to help build this kingdom. Recently, Jonathan Rinderknecht was arrested as the suspect who started the fires in California's Palisades.
Good morning. I'm Bill Asaley, the acting United States Attorney for the Central District of California. Today, we are announcing the arrest of 29-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht for igniting a fire that ultimately burned down the Palisades earlier this year, killing 12 people, destroying more than 6,800 structures, both homes and businesses, and damaging over 1,000 more buildings. The complaint unsealed today charges the defendant with destruction of property by means of fire, a felony that carries a mandatory minimum 5-year federal prison sentence and is punishable by up to 20 years in federal prison. The defendant was arrested yesterday on a federal criminal complaint near his Florida residence, and he's expected to make his initial appearance today in the federal court in Orlando, Florida. I stress that the complaint contains allegations, and every defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The allegations in the affidavit are supported by digital evidence, including the defendant's ChatGPT prompt of a dystopian painting showing in part a burning forest and a crowd fleeing from it. And we're going to put that up on the screen here once we get that going. The allegations are, there it is. That's from his ChatGPT. That's an image he produced a few months before the fire started. It shows the city being burned there. The allegations are further supported by the defendant's cell phone, his false statements to law enforcement, and his behavior during the Lockman fire, which the defendant is charged with maliciously starting shortly after midnight on New Year's Day of this year, and which eventually became the Palisades fire. Late last New Year's Eve, Rinderknecht returned to Pacific Palisades after working the evening shift as an Uber driver. 2 of his passengers told law enforcement that he appeared agitated and angry that night. After dropping off a passenger in Pacific Palisades, Rinderknecht parked his car and tried and failed to contact a former friend. He exited the car, walked up a nearby trail, took iPhone videos at a nearby hilltop, and listened to a rap song whose music video including objects being lit on fire. The defendant had listened to this song and watched its music video repeatedly in the days leading up to the Lockman fire. 12 minutes into the new year, environmental sensing platforms indicated that a fire had started. It took the defendant several tries to contact 911 to report the fire. He fled the scene in his car, but turned around after passing fire engines driving in the opposite direction to fight the fire. While the Lockman fire burned, the defendant walked up the same trail from earlier that night to watch the fire and firefighters, using his iPhone to take short videos of the scene. Although firefighters suppressed the blaze, the fire continued to smolder and burn underground within the root structure of the dense vegetation. So that fire started on January 1st, and it smoldered underground for about a week until on January 7th, heavy winds caused this underground fire to surface and spread above ground, causing what became known as the Palisades Fire.
Now, of course, this actually isn't too surprising because this often is the case with any major fires. People lost their minds over the fires in the Amazon all those years ago, but it turns out that was actually just a normal fire clearing. It was bigger than normal because there was that much that had to be burnt away. Furthermore, to blow the minds of a bunch of activists out there, yes, fire burnings and clearings are used to help prevent forest fires. And in the case of the Australian fires, there were a lot of arsonists who were arrested for that as well. This isn't to say some of the fire wasn't at least caused by natural occurrences like lightning. Of course that happens. However, even 200 people were arrested at the time, and later reports cleared that up to be 183 people were all held accountable at varying degrees. Again, some people caused fires by accident, but that happens. Accidents are accidents, but some reports have stated that over 85% of the fires were caused by arsonists, many of whom happen to be activists as well. And there's a simple truth to why so many fires are caused around the planet by activists, because much of what is happening is predicated on fear. Just like the compilation I played in the last video, the evidence is quite clear, and climate change is no different. Hell, the history of climate change has been as inaccurate as Helen Keller signing up to be a stormtrooper. In the 70s, they were claiming we were going to enter a new ice age by the 80s and 90s, and then by the 80s and 90s, we were claimed to go into a world famine by the 90s and aughts. And then by the late 90s and the early aughts, claims of global warming were going to show that the entirety of all of our ice caps were going to be melted, the sea levels were going to rise, and all of our coastlines and numerous islands were going to be wiped out. That was Al Gore's, great claim to fame, was that he was going to save everyone from climate change. Anyone else remember this? Does anyone else remember all of the gas credits that piece of shit was making money off of? And here we are in the year of our Lord 2025 AD, and the Obamas are living on coastal property that was supposed to be underwater. And it's really funny because if you trust the science, it turns out that NASA's own satellite data reveals that ice is growing at record amounts. On top of this, it turns out that over the last 35 years, the Earth has become more green due to increased CO2 levels around the planet. Man, it's weird. It's almost like plants survive on CO2. Who would have thunk? I mean, hell, we know that climate change isn't really a big problem, and even activists know that it's not, because Greta Thunberg is over here screaming free Palestine and lying about being tortured by Israel. But the real question is, why does this keep happening if it's not actually as big a problem as people think it is? I think it's really simple. It's greed. It's money in politics. That's what it comes down to. If there is no problem to solve, then there's no money to be made. Hell, why do you think Black Lives Matter became Buy Large Mansions when Patrisse Cullors stole a bunch of donations and used it to buy multiple mansions for her and her family? And as I always say, actions speak louder than words. Obviously, if someone tells you what they're gonna do or what they wish, like those J. Jones texts, that's one thing. But if people are actively trying to allow things to get worse, pay attention to what they're doing. This is most evident by legislation that prevents forest cleanup. It's been happening for decades. Hell, even Senator Dianne Feinstein, yes, that Dianne Feinstein, to her credit, argued against environmentalists who were lobbying against legislation that would prevent the clearing of dead and dry underbrush way back in 2002 in California. That same kind of legislation exists all throughout the West Coast, in Washington, Oregon, as well as in countries like Australia. This is why these fires grow so powerful and vast in such short amounts of time. It is environmental legislation that actually prevents people from going out and clearing underbrush to stop any future fires. The reason why the Pacific Northwest out in Washington doesn't have this kind of problem is because everything is so wet all the time that all of the underbrush just rots. Hell, back when I lived out in Washington State, it was so brutal. If it wasn't those 200-foot tall pine trees, everything underneath the canopy was so rotten and disgusting, it looked like you were walking through a Lord of the Rings forest. Unironically, there were spiders with health bars. They were so massive. But again, that kind of legislation is rampant throughout the world. It is specifically the environmentalists who push to protect the Earth and the morons in government who don't actually allow for the cleanup at all. It's a simple cycle. You have corrupt politicians and environmentalists who use climate change to spark fear, and then legislation is implemented to allow those fires to happen. Activists then cause the fires to stoke more fears and thus capitulation, and said corrupt politicians swoop in and buy the land dirt cheap to profit. Rinse and repeat. It's the same thing with BLM and Antifa. All of these environmentalists and activists are all just stupid foot soldiers who willingly do these things because they think they're fighting for something greater, when in fact they are exacerbating the problem. So the next time a massive riot, in the same way a giant fire starts, just sit back and wait for the information to come out, because it's almost guaranteed to have been started by somebody who wanted to cause the problem. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, then please like, share, and subscribe to help build this kingdom. Head to my main channel, Albeleo, for movie reviews and discussions. Head to my tertiary channel, Balmorian Galaxy, for BattleTech and MechWarrior. And if you feel so inclined, then please donate to me on Subscribestar to help me continue to produce more content for all of you. I thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.